My name is Monica Smith, and I've been volunteering in the Salvation Army charity shop on Mill Road for 17 years and enjoyed every minute of it. Well, my father and mother died in childbirth, having her fourth child. So he was left with his dad and his three brother and sister. And he had really quite a tough bringing up, being looked after by his dad. And my dad really didn't have a good childhood at all. My mother, her childhood was absolutely extraordinary. She was born in Castle Street in Saffron Walden, and her mum and dad were Salvation Army. I even remember being told that Grandma had actually played in the Royal Albert Hall with the bands of the Salvation Army. And it so happened that she had, in the end, she had, I think it was 12 children, but they didn't all survive. She had, I think, 2 or 3 sets of twins. My mother was a twin. However, on the other side of the road where she lived, there was an old barn, and it was being converted into a church. Eventually, it was a Catholic church, and the new priest there, obviously new to the town, new to the church, suddenly saw an opportunity to convert these 6 or 7 children from the other side of the road. So he used to ask them into the church and perhaps give them a food, sweets or something, which my grandmother was getting a bit suspicious and said, you know, what's going on here? So he invited her in and my granddad, and in the end the whole family were converted to Catholicism. And my mother kept it on. And she was in church one day, and a very rich, or supposedly rich, lady, titled lady, heard my mother coughing, thought she'd got whooping cough or something. And she turned to my mother, my grandmother, and said, can I take Jessie back to Devonshire with me? I think the air would do her good. And mother, getting rid of one child, was delighted, so she gave permission. This lady, and she was a titled lady, took her back to her humble home because she'd lost a lot of her money in the, was it
1920s depression?
Yeah, something like that. So my mother lived like a rich girl in poor circumstances. She was told how to hold a knife and fork, how to put the things on the table. Everything was to perfection. And that is how my mum grew up, and that's how she became, well, of both worlds. She knew how the rich lived and she knew how the poor lived. Yeah. I can remember when we used to go out for picnics, Mother wouldn't just have, you know, a bag and things in. They all used to have to be put in boxes, and all the wrapping papers and knives and forks. You go on a picnic and you're in the house because you've got everything ready, so you could go and open the dining room. And that was to perfection.
Yes.
And she was like that all through her life.
And how long did your mother live to?
101. Because I was 3 months premature born, or 2 months premature actually, from where I lived in Gwyder Street off Mill Road, to actually go to the Catholic school. The doctors advised my mother that the walk backwards and forwards to school was going to be too much for me. And at 9 years old, I was then getting stronger and was able to go to the Catholic school, which was in Union Road, near the Catholic Church on Hills Road. So I was there for 2 years, and by this time it was wartime. We were up at night with the sirens going, and I took the 11 plus, but didn't pass. And my headmaster, he said, Monica should have passed the 11 plus, but I understand why. She was up all night the night before because we had air raid sirens. He said, you can't expect children to carry on as though nothing's happening, but Monica should have passed. So with that recommendation, St Mary's Convent, which is a private school, very quite expensive, had, I think it was 2 vacancies that they could pass on to anybody from the Catholic school who would like to go. So I was chosen, and another girl was chosen, and that was how we were both given a place in the school. It was called Paston House in those days, and all Mother had to pay for was the books. Funnily enough, when I look back, if ever I was given a bit of paper, I always seemed to want to draw a house. It was nothing in my mind, oh, I'm going to be an architect, or I'm going to be a surveyor. Pen and ink, no computers in those days, no. And stencils to do writing in. So, another job that came my way I wasn't thinking about, I go for the interview, get the job, and that's how I started in architecture and surveying. In the 1960s to 65, we converted the whole of the Royal Cambridge Hotel. And I was there, I think it was about 18 months, really directing the men every day what to do. And they loved it. I only had one man who said, I've never taken orders from a woman before. I said, it was about time you started. Well, it's a knock on the door is a bit of a, a saying.
Yes.
But there's so many things. I mean, first of all, whoever thought that I'd be able to go to a secondary education or higher education? My mum and dad hadn't got the money for that. And the knock on my door was the lady saying, the instrument company is okay, but I've got a better job in the Ministry of Works. So I took that and went there. Then while I was there was a structural engineer, and he said, I do a little bit of work outside the work here, would you like to do some work for me? And he was doing work at the Garden House Hotel, I don't know what it's called now, by the river. And he introduced me to the man there, and he said, can you put in 2 or 3 hours a week? I need some help. Well, I'd been there about 2 or 3 weeks. He said, can you give your job up and work for me full time? I wasn't looking for another job, and that was definitely architecture. That was had to design it, do all the measurements, and that was the first time that I was allowed, well, not allowed, but had to go out on site to meet the workmen. Now, I'd never had that to do before. Well, there's never 2 days alike. The friendship with all the volunteers, it goes round, and how are you, how's the grandchildren, everything all right? And it's a little community on its own. Well, yes, because it's made me go out. It's made me think more of the people who come into the shop need the shop. After I left school, I didn't really have any plan of what I wanted to do, but somehow the jobs that I was given, I didn't apply for them. People said, oh, there's a job there, go for it. It seemed as though it was working up to the final job that was meant for me, which was the architecture. I think I had a very, very good start in life with lovely parents, and I was an only child. Unfortunately, the man I married was not a good man, and that was not good. But out of that, somehow I was able to survive happily with the children, my mum and dad. I was an only child, and everything that has come my way has been good.